Hello and welcome to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. Today, our very special guest is Mark Grozen-Smith of Thresh Power. Mark is not just of Thresh Power, he almost is Thresh Power. He is the founder and the CEO. And hey, Mark, what does Thresh Power do exactly?
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks so much, Sean. So Thresh, we are an automated diligence system for anyone who is investing in or acquiring an energy project. So put it in simpler terms, if you're looking to buy or invest in a solar farm, you need to know a lot of things about it. So you upload a bunch of documentation and we tell you all the information about that.
Okay, hey, I want to buy one right now. What should we do? Let's do it.
Well, first up, you want to find one. We don't help with that. We're not like a marketplace or something. That's what a lot of people initially think. But you're going to go talk to the seller and get a bunch of information from them, what you call a data room. If you're not familiar with a data room, it's basically just a Google Drive folder, Dropbox folder, something like that.
And what did you call it? It's a data room.
Yeah, data room. Exactly.
Okay. Huh. Okay. Yeah. So it's like a folder of some sort.
Exactly. And in that, you're going to have hundreds of files, depending on the exact project and the stage it's in. You'll have more or less files, but you'll have a bunch of files. Those files are going to be everything from a bunch of leases and easements and amendments and things about land to the studies and agreements that are there for interconnection, all sorts of things related to the different pieces of the project.
Mm-hmm. And where does all of this come from? Is it like when you start working on the project, is it already there?
Yeah, I mean, it's that's basically what the development period is. So I think a lot of people don't really know too much about how solar farms, wind farms, et cetera, actually get built. Remind me, who's the majority of the audience for this podcast?
Just only people building giant solar farms, 1 gigawatt and bigger, probably, or half that, and then half people doing 3 kilowatt residential systems. Nothing in
Cool.
between. Yeah, nothing in between 3 kilowatts and a gigawatt.
Really?
No, I don't know. I'm just making it up.
Okay, I was wondering.
I mean, I kind of what I do is I work with all ends of the spectrum. So like the National Electrical Code, people are interested in that. And it's, small, big, everything in between. And it's all interesting to me. I like the technical stuff. And especially I think right now too, the big stuff is super interesting. I know that there's a lot of people that are like, coming down on the residential part of the industry. And a lot of people don't really understand too, or they're surprised to hear that 2/3 of the solar in the United States is utility scale. So it's like, I think it's really interesting and important. And I've seen other people too, where they kind of take steps, like they start off in the industry and they're doing residential and they get bigger and they get bigger. And then pretty soon they're doing some kind of utility scale project.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've worked with a couple customers who started out doing commercial and then we saw a couple opportunities for something a little bigger and we wanted to learn a little bit more about how to take that down. And then, yeah, I mean, haven't seen them all the way through to a full gigawatt project or something yet, but expanding out from dozens of kilowatts, hundreds of kilowatts up to 5 or 10 megawatts. It's a cool growth trajectory to watch.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny too. Like if 25 years ago, if you had a 10 kilowatt system, you might make it on the front page of the paper, And now it's like how many hundreds of kilowatts or hundreds of megawatts would it take to get on the front page of the paper now?
Oh yeah. I mean, you got to be over a gigawatt for sure on that one, depending on what paper we're talking about. But the way large solar is often built, there are teams that are focused on the development phase. And when we say development, that might include construction, but there's a lot of stuff to do before you actually get to construction.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure a lot of the people listening know how this works, but for the people who don't.
No, I think a lot of people would be helped by understanding how this works because it's like a super long process, right? It takes years. And a lot of the projects don't go through. And so it takes people with deep pockets and they got to go out there and find land and they need people to they'll go find some farmer and they'll, make a deal like if it's going to work or if it's not going to work. And, they do a little bit of a lease on the property just in case it works. I'll let you explain it. You must know it well.
No, totally. I mean, you're exactly right. Deep pockets is a big piece. The reason solar or wind or battery, the reason that all of this stuff is so hard is because of the types of people, the different types of expertise that we need to pull in. If you think about sending rockets to space and reusing them, type of SpaceX type of thing, that's hard in a very fundamental scientific engineering way. And solar is something totally different. Like if everything just works out and everybody's aligned, we know how to build solar very well. But the reason that it's so hard is that in order to build a large scale solar farm, you need so many different types of people to agree, to support each other, to like support the project. And so that's going to be money and financing, like you said, kind of the deep pockets. It's going to be a lot of relationships and just making sure that you
Hmm.
actually have built the trust with the landowners, with the community, et cetera. And then it's also going to be a lot of different technical expertise. So making sure you understand the actual electrical and mechanical connections and designs you're going to need to build, and then kind of coordinating that across those relationships, different stakeholders, and the money, the financing, et cetera.
So, like, what does it cost to get started? Or, I mean, I could just take some wild guesses. Let's say I find 10 different projects and I try to develop 10 different projects. Maybe I would spend 100 grand on each project and then one of them would go through. Is that some kind of scenario that would be realistic?
Yeah, I mean, if you're asking if you're asking specifically on the prices, it's going to range so substantially depending on the type of
Yeah,
project, the
sure.
stage that they're at, et cetera. But no, yeah, I mean, you're definitely right. It is a lot of like a portfolio investment type of game. So,
Hmm.
teams will have a handful of projects and they're not expecting 100% of those projects to go through. And when I say teams, that might be a huge team, nationwide, international developer, or it might be like, one or two people just working together. I heard a story about this guy who had, I think he had four projects. He had them all in the interconnection queue. The upgrade costs were projected to be north of like $40 million for these projects. And he was expecting he would drop at least two of them or something. But for whatever reason, he stuck into that interconnection queue. He stuck in through a pretty late phase, and the other projects that were in the queue all dropped out. And so his network upgrade costs went from, I think it was a total of like $45 million or something to
Wow.
zero. So all of his projects that he wasn't even sure if he was going to keep and probably didn't really make sense to do, all of a sudden they penciled, and he just had these incredibly lucrative projects that worked out on the interconnection
Say
queue.
that again. Like, so there's the interconnection costs. Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, well, so the way that the interconnection works, so I'll just define interconnection because it's a little bit of a specific term. You really need to make sure that any sort of generator or load, so a solar farm or a data center or something like that, common term, common examples, anything that you're going to put onto the grid, connect to the grid, is not going to overload any of those power lines. So if we change where the electricity is flowing because we're introducing a new load or a new generator, we need to make sure that the power lines aren't going to get overloaded and catch fire or break or some sort of failure. So we do a whole lot of studies and analysis and make sure that the grid is not going to explode in any way. And that's the interconnection process overall. And so that's broken up. It's a very complicated process and it's different in every region. But the way that they do it is you join the interconnection queue, you're in a cluster, which means a group of a bunch of different projects that are applying at once.
So it'll be like some big patch of desert somewhere, something like that. And there might be 10 different entities trying to make 10 different solar farms out there.
Well, not just in that one spot though. Like the interconnection needs to be, evaluating the grid stability as a whole. So they'll take in the 10, I mean, it's going to be more than 10, but they'll take in a bunch of different projects
So
and
a
kind of
whole
do
bunch
that.
of different projects. And they're like, you're talking about utility scale solar farms, multiple megawatts, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Okay. And then so the person that you were talking about, their project went through, none of the others did. So they didn't need to upgrade stuff. Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, because they do the analysis that the utility, the ISO, like the whoever's, the grid manager, the grid operator, they're going to do this analysis to see where are things going to fail. And if something is going to fail, they don't just tell you you can't build your project, but they'll say, in order for you to build your project, we're going to need to upgrade these transmission lines. So here's kind of the timeline that's going to take, and here's how much money you need to pay us to upgrade this transmission line, to build that infrastructure. So that's the cost I'm talking about, network upgrade costs.
So do you see people getting competitive with this and wanting the other person to drop out and like I mean it sounds like there's like a huge multi-million dollar incentive for this guy to take out the competition or like
Yeah, I haven't heard of any nefarious
or
activity
like
with
do they
this.
just go like Rochambeau and decide?
Well, yeah, I mean, people are definitely hoping that others will drop out. I haven't heard, I mean, we personally do not operate in any sort of dark arts that might involve.
Yeah, I mean I could also imagine too like paying a guy off and would that even be illegal to just be like okay there's a whole bunch of us or there's some kind of group And we want everybody to drop out but one person because then we'll make a bigger profit. We don't have to upgrade the interconnection. And if we all
Hmm.
stay in, it's going to cost us more and we won't make a big profit. So I'm going to give everybody else $1 million to drop out. I mean, I don't know if that would be illegal. Maybe not. I don't know.
I don't know if it'd be illegal. I mean, honestly, it sounds like a great idea. And my guess is that it's just like, where do the numbers actually make sense? I
Hmm.
mean, if I'm even considering paying $12 million for network upgrade costs, I'm probably going to need a lot more than 1 million to pay me off.
Yeah, well, but it would be an easy way out or something, just like I got other stuff to do or whatever. There might be a number instead of just somebody just like dropping out for no reason at all. It
Yeah.
sounds like it probably should be illegal, but it also kind of sounds like capitalism, and capitalism
Yeah.
shouldn't be illegal. And it's like if there's too many people using the grid at that one spot, then it makes the project maybe not very feasible. And you got to wait till a certain amount of people drop off. And if they all just make a deal, Rochambeau, whatever, I mean, maybe that would help it make the projects work, get more solar in the
Yeah.
world, or.
No, I mean that's totally possible. I can imagine that. So okay, so we've gone pretty deep down the path of interconnection. Thresh is not a particular interconnection type of software. There's a lot of good
Mhm.
stuff out there that's
Yeah.
been built for
Mhm.
interconnection. But yeah, I mean we're really looking at the data room at the project as a whole to help you understand what's going on in interconnection, what are the numbers there, that network upgrade costs, as well as what kind of risks you see, but also the same type of thing on environmental permitting, site control, etc.
Mhm. Pretty cool. All right. So your company does a lot with AI, I guess, right?
Yeah, that we do.
And how do you do that? Like you have this data room, which is sort of like a big old Google Drive or some folder or something like that. And then you might take all that data and send it to some kind of AI and tell it to give you some outputs, I guess.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, so first, I'll just quickly describe like what the customer, what the developer or investor is actually trying to do. They just want to understand the project. What that really means is they want to have the numbers that they need for the financial modeling. They need to know just how is this project structured from a
Hmm.
engineering design and everything, as well as kind of financial design. What are the investment structures, et cetera. And then they need to know what are the risks involved here? How can we mitigate those risks and just be aware of what risk we're taking on with this project? So that's really like the high level three goals that they have. And so what Thresh does is you upload all the files into Thresh about all the files about the
Hmm.
project, the studies, leases, etc. And then what we're doing is we're pulling out those financial numbers, or pulling out those numbers that you want to put into your financial model. We're breaking down and giving you a good onboarding to how the project is structured in those ways I just mentioned. And then calling out certain risks. I can give some good examples. The easiest, quickest example is you've got 40 leases for a large project, and it might take you a long time to realize that three of those leases are for 10 years, while the rest are for 25 years, like they should be.
And that's leases for the land, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
Okay,
yeah, I mean,
great.
you want to know that there's a couple of leases that are not for the proper amount of time. So you'll need to go mitigate those risks. But it takes so long to find the needle in the haystack of these documents to find that type of risk out.
Mhm. Like a lot of people are concerned that AI is going to take away jobs. And they were
Mm,
concerned that computers were going to take away jobs. And it just created a lot of computer jobs. And
yeah.
perhaps AI is going to create a whole bunch of like AI jobs because even though you have AI, you need to know what to tell it and how to best use the AI. And so that's, I guess, what Thresh is doing. Like you are creating jobs that wouldn't be there with it wasn't for AI.
Totally. I mean, what we see, like the customers that we're talking to, they've hired the people that they can. I mean, you can't just keep on hiring more people to do some of this work. If you're looking at let's take a developer that's acquiring projects, if they want to buy these projects and then continue the building of them and operate them and everything, if they want to buy more projects, they need to be looking at more projects. And so
Hmm.
you can hire a couple more people on your M&A team, but at the end of the day, it kind of ends up being too many cooks in the kitchen. It's really hard to manage that volume of projects and that volume of data.
Hmm.
And so what we're letting you do is just expand the capacity of what you're able to do in terms of the acquisition process. And then once you get past that, then your team is able to be developing 10 projects instead of just six. Now, like think about how many more jobs are going to be involved there if you're building out 30, 40% more solar there.
Okay, great, great. And yeah, I could imagine like if you're working for some big company and trying to analyze 10 different huge projects and they're just like, how do you keep track? Like you come
Yeah.
in one day and you come in the other day. And so that sounds pretty cool to have all of that AI there. And I bet a bunch of it too gets really expensive because then you have really expensive attorneys that you have to pay for going through a lot of this stuff. And apparently AI is like better than an attorney in some ways because also it's not like soulless. Just kidding, attorneys.
Yeah, I mean, no comments on the presence of souls in either case. But no, I mean, definitely the attorneys are going to do a great job, and they're probably going to be involved eventually
Mhm.
in any situation. You're not going to make an $80 million purchase and never have your attorneys looking at every single curve of every letter for every word in that contract, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, that makes sense eventually, but if you're just trying to get through a bunch of documents and just I mean, specifically on the lease thing, like that's where we see
Yeah.
people using attorneys a lot. It's just we've got a bunch of leases and we need to break those down and identify the terms on each one of those. That's not like a super complex, we need to understand some crazy contract situation. Like it's not something where you really need to be applying your attorneys and legal teams, certainly not initially. And so being able to have Thresh just pull out all that information and display it in a really easy to read format in a lot less cost than attorneys, but also even less time. Humans still
Yeah.
take time to
Uh-huh.
read, whereas we get everything done in 5 minutes.
So you're like an expert, or at least your company is an expert at using AI, like how to best use it. And we're all learning how to use it. And I'm
Yeah.
using it all the time, every day. And sometimes it's too easy. Like one of the things that I just did the other day is I was like, I uploaded two documents and I'm like, write me an article. And 10 seconds later, there's this like full on article. I'm like, whoa, that was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
I would have spent, hours doing that. And I'm like, well, I can't really do that. It's just like, it's sort of like cheating or something. But it's also a tool and it's helpful. And then I could read that article and it kind of meshed together the other two articles or the documents that I threw in there. And it just seems like super helpful. It would be stupid not to do it, and I'm sure that everybody's doing that. I'm sure that all of the writers for the big newspapers like New York Times are probably, using that kind of help, but they're not just like pumping out New York Times articles that are just 100% AI, but they're using it as a tool. So, what's the trick? You must know how to work AI better than most anyone, right?
Yeah. I mean, I like to call us AI whisperers. So there are parts of our product where you
Like
can,
a horse whisperer. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. I have horses.
So
Yeah.
we have no horses, but we do have
Uh-huh.
AI.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I mean, like there are parts of our product where the user is able to type things into a chat box, just like typical ChatGPT or something. And it's really great and that's really helpful. And we're going to continue doing that. But also, there are lots of places where we've written in the exact prompts and we're talking to the AI with the exact ways that we know how to do that AI whispering. And the reason for that is because exactly as you're implying, like there are specific ways that you want to work with AI. Anyone who's used ChatGPT or Claude or whatever else, they know that in order to get the answer to one question, you've usually got to ask it like 4 or 5 times, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so we know how to phrase it in the right ways and interact with the rest of the system really well, such that you get the exact answer you actually need.
Hmm. Pretty cool. So, do you ever ask AI for good AI prompts?
We don't in the product, but I definitely
Uh-huh.
do. That I mean, that's
Yeah.
I do two things. Let's say you're trying to understand something about your car. You want to tell it initially, hey, you are, top tier car mechanic who's been working at Ford for the last 80 years or something like that. Something that give it some kind of focus to know how it should be thinking, and then give it specific words and specific ways to be, looking for the information that you want. Yeah.
Great, great. So, I also noticed too, like we were speaking of jobs, that on your LinkedIn profile, you're hiring a senior engineer.
Yeah, and we actually
You're
just hired
creating
one.
jobs. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, of course.
Uh-huh.
And we actually just hired that person, so they'll be coming on in just a couple of weeks, and we're excited for that. It'll be really nice to be able to have more people on the team so that we can just devote energy to the customers that we currently have and help them build out exactly what they need for their exact workflows. while also being able to build more for kind of the longer term vision that we have. So being able to balance that really requires more people for sure.
And so when you're looking for an engineer, is it more like a computer engineer
Yeah.
or like an engineer that understands, how to wire up a solar system? So it's more of like a computer engineer. So your company too it's like clean tech. In fact, there's like I met you at an event that we had that was for San Francisco Climate Week, NorCal Solar at Port Labs on April 25th, because I remember that was for Bill Brooks's 60th birthday party and
Mhm.
NorCal Solar's second annual 50th anniversary party. And you were one of the speakers at that event, which was really cool. And it was in Oakland. I think you live in San Francisco, I guess, right?
Yeah, yeah, I do.
And so is your company more of a like work from home type of a company? I mean, that's what a lot of people are doing. I mean, kind of myself, I don't have to run into some office unless it's my own. And so when you hire somebody like the engineer that you just hired, are they local?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty flexible. I mean, we're a startup, so it's not like we have 400 people in a massive office or something. So, I mean, we're pretty flexible. We've done a lot of working remote. We've done a lot of working at just each of the co-founders' houses and stuff. We work at 90 a lot. So 90 is a climate-focused co-working space, everything from,
Uh-huh.
energy and EV charging and stuff like that, all the way to what's that? There's like an underwater, I don't know, some sort of an underwater exploration type of thing.
Oh, cool.
Just yeah, carbon
Scuba
sequestration, all of
diving.
that.
No.
Yeah.
So that sounds interesting. So it's called 90. I met you at Port Labs and they do some
Yeah.
that kind of stuff too out of Oakland. And so
Cool.
this 90 Labs is in San Francisco?
Yeah, just 90. That's like it's right in the center too. Right next to like the Montgomery BART, right around there.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I've got off at Montgomery BART a million times, and a lot of us went down that way when there was Intersolar in San Francisco, and that was the station to get
Yeah.
off. And it's a good, you could just walk up to North Beach and go have an Italian dinner, and it's kind of a good part of town. So sounds pretty cool. And I also noticed too that you went to Harvard. Harvard's kind of in the news right now.
Yeah.
Little politics going on there. I went to Harvard, but I just went there and studied. I sometimes I went like I would go to teach classes in different places, and I've done a number of classes in Massachusetts, over in Boston, and I like
Cool.
to go by colleges and just like I love colleges, and so like I'm always near Cal Berkeley eating a salad and. It just kind of like I like the feel and the energy and all that. And so I went into the Harvard, I guess it's like a student union, and I worked there and I was like, hey, I could tell everybody I studied at Harvard, but it's kind of a joke for me. For you, it's serious.
Yeah.
We interrupt you for a very important announcement. Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast has been brought to you by Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. That's right, Sean White is sponsoring his own podcast, and he wants to remind you to go check out some of his classes. You can go to SolarSEAN, that's solar, SEAN.com, and then click on the links to check out his classes. You can check out his heat spring classes, and you can also hire him to teach classes for you, like at your company, something like that. Now back to the show. And so what kind of clients are you looking for?
Yeah, I mean, like I was mentioning, we're focused a lot on developers as well as capital providers. So the developer side, solar, wind, or battery, we're helpful for all of them. Especially, I mean, solar is just the largest number of projects, so primarily focus on solar, but we help with all three. Wind in particular has a lot of leases often because they're just physically very large projects. So when we dive into the land piece, that there's a lot there. But everybody has to deal with the same types of issues with permits and the designs and interconnection, everything too. But yeah, and then in terms of scale, we have a lot of traction with the utility scale, but then DG and community solar are often also
Mhm.
sufficiently complicated that Thresh is helpful. But the big thing there is the number of projects as well. So everything we've talked about so far is like the complexity of evaluating one project. But if you're looking at a portfolio of 20 projects at once, that is the same level of work times 20, right?
Mhm.
And so a lot of
Yeah.
those teams, they'll get 20 or 30 or 40 projects at once, and then they have to just kind of evaluate, like they'll either throw a huge team at it and hope that they can catch everything, or they'll look at 5 or 6 projects, just like 10 or so percent of the whole portfolio, and then hope that that's properly representative. And so they're taking on a lot of risk and seeing where they can go there. Kind of comes back to it being like a portfolio approach. But the other thing is, yeah, the capital providers. So we work with some banks and some just kind of investment teams as well to help them get through the huge volume they're seeing as well.
Great, great. So what got you into climate? Like you just one day woke up and go like, this sounds like a pretty cool industry to get into. And like it's like it's a good way to like help out people. It's very positive and also a good way to make money.
Yeah. No, I mean, I will say before I describe my background at all, that is one of my favorite things, just how helpful and positive everybody is. There's a lot of industries where you say like, "Hey, I'm just getting into this," or "I care about all this," and people are like, "All right, cool, whatever, good luck, bye." Whereas a lot of this, I mean, as soon as I met you, as soon as I met our mutual friend Paul, a bunch of other people,
Whole
everybody's
Substack.
yeah, exactly. Everybody's excited to introduce new people to new things. Even if you're in the industry, but you're really in this space, people are like, oh yeah, let me tell you about how all this works and stuff. It's a really nice, like welcoming space. But how I got here, I mean, so I grew up in Hawaii, and in just my lifetime, seeing how much it has changed in the ocean and just all over is painful. I mean, it's really sad to see just what's happening to our planet so quickly.
Mhm.
I was working in tech and I did really fun, great things at companies like Google and a couple different startups. And it was great. Learned a lot of things, met cool people, made money. But at the end of the day, I never felt like I was doing what I actually was meant to do. I never felt like I was doing something that mattered. Like I said, if you look at just what's happening in the oceans and on our land and in our air and everything, we need to do more for just taking care of the planet. And energy is just really the core source of all of it. I feel like so many problems get fixed if we just have a huge, cheap, abundant source of good energy. So that's where I came towards the solar space.
And I've heard some good selling points too for, renewable energy and things like that. And it's kind of cool too. You're coming from like the tech angle. So just another way of using silicon chips. And like somebody's going to win the AI race. And we need lots of energy for that. And the best way to scale up energy quick is with PV. Is it going to be DeepSeek and Huawei, or is it going to be an American company? And we need to really scale this thing up and get it going. And there's so many crossovers too between tech and also, clean energy, especially solar and storage, but also wind too. And not just, like making that kind of software that you're making with AI, but also coordinating all the electrons and where they're going to go. And I'm sure it crosses over, but I think that there is going to be a ton of jobs where it's going to take people with your kind of skills that are tech skills that also have knowledge of the solar industry and how solar works and stuff like that too. Like I do see people coming through my classes where I'm just teaching them about the basics of solar or something like that. They're getting their NABCEP associate, and they're also like somebody that's been working at tech companies and things like that that just wants to actually know exactly what they're working with, understand the differences between, voltage and current and all that kind of stuff and how it works. So it's pretty cool to see all of this stuff coming together and how silicon isn't just for, capturing sunlight. It's also for the other way, taking some of that sunlight energy and putting it into the chip. I wonder if ever someday somebody's going to invent a chip where you put it in the sun and it actually does computing with that sunlight.
That'd be cool. That'd be great. But no, I mean, to your point though, like I think a lot of people don't understand just the level of complexity that is very rapidly developing in how we use energy. I mean, 50 years ago, you had power plants and those would transmit power to kind of the center areas that would just go out to houses. Maybe you'd have some manufacturing facilities and you'd have some large loads there, but it wasn't that complex. It was kind of a couple main sources of power, and then they go out to relatively stable, pretty predictable areas of energy. Now we're having, yes, we still have those power plants. Some of those are very controllable and predictable, like gas and coal and stuff like that. Hydropower and geothermal is incredible. But then you also have solar and wind and batteries and stuff where that stuff is going up and down in a predictable way as well, but it's just harder to predict and it's more variable, even if predictable. And so now there's much more complexity from the large scale power plants, but then you also have the distributed energy resources like rooftop solar, things like that, maybe commercial scale solar and battery and stuff like that. So just the generation side of energy has gotten much more complicated, spread all throughout the city and more rural areas. And then in terms of the actual load, not just small things like people turning on their lights in their houses, but at your house you might be charging an electric car, which is a huge load all of a sudden. Throughout different areas, you have like EV charging stations. That's a huge load that is going to go up and down. It's really hard to predict a lot of this stuff. It's gotten so much more complicated. So exactly as you're saying, like the complexity that we're facing and new additions that we're going to need to make to how we run, where the electrons go. Yeah, it's growing in complexity a lot.
Great, great. Yeah. And even I like to look at like an electric vehicle. A lot of people go like it's a load. And if we have like a stupid grid, we don't have all you smart tech people figuring this out, then we've got a stupid grid and it's just a load. But if we have a smart grid, it could be not just a variable load, which is getting to be really popular right now, but also a source. And that electric vehicle, instead of being something like a problem on the grid, it's actually a benefit. And it's just helping us like put, energy storage. It's a lot. Electric vehicles are a lot of energy storage. And a lot of people don't use much of their battery on a daily basis, and
Yeah.
there's just a ton there. So, yeah.
No, I mean, super exciting. People call it V2G, vehicle to grid. So it's not just charging into the car, but it could also charge back into the grid for demand that's needed there. I mean, it's super complicated. Like you can't have the grid, energy supply and energy demand being close. It needs to be exactly equal, right?
Yeah.
Like if you turn on your light, that can't have too little power or too much. Otherwise, you don't get light or the light bulb explodes. And so yeah, I mean, it needs to be very precise across a highly complex space. So it's pretty wild, but I mean, I'm really excited. Like, I would love to look 100 years into the future and just see exactly how it all works.
I know
I'm
that's why I
excited.
want to live long. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good time to be in energy and tech for sure.
Uh-huh. Or I could just travel at the speed of light and come back and see what things progress to.
Yeah.
Another thing too is when we were talking about like the old style of grid, and I just kind of thought of it this way, is the old style grid is using magnetics. So they're like spinning magnetic fields and things like that. And the new style grid is using a lot of electronics. So even magnetics is like a transformer, all that kind of stuff. And now we're still using, magnetics, but we have a lot of electronics doing stuff and inverters and DC to DC converters and computer chip stuff. And it's kind of like magic. I mean, imagine if those people that were putting the grid together 100 years ago came and looked and saw what we were doing with our grid, they'd probably be kind of amazed. Although there still are plenty of old 100-year-old technology transformers out there. So,
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see where that goes because a lot of those electronics are able to move a lot faster than what would typically happen in more inertial states like magnetics and things like that. So like a data center, data centers are talked about a lot, but for good reasons. Data centers can go from like 40% to 100% energy utilization. So of the total power that they might need, they'll jump between 40% and 100% or something. They'll just make wide jumps in a very, very short amount of time. So maybe going from 0 to 100 within a second multiple times. And so, I mean, it's pretty shocking to see that level of variability and scary to think like we might not be able to handle that today. But the opposite of scary is also like fun opportunities to solve that type of problem.
I know you better not ask it any more of those really hard questions. It might take up a lot of energy. I was actually even wondering this, that perhaps a data center could be in some way like a variable load. I've asked people about this before. So, like, you want a really good answer with your AI, it's going to take more energy. It's going to do more processing. And so maybe it could slow it down a little bit. I mean, I'm sure it's slowing it down for different reasons too, or you pay extra, like I have the paid version of Chat GPT. And how much of a variable load could it be? I know like when people talk about like cryptocurrency, that's a super variable load. They could just turn it off. And so I've even heard arguments by people saying like this could actually be a good thing for solar because people will invest in solar projects that are twice as big and then they can have these loads turn off anytime, no problem. It's not going to, you don't really need it. And so with the AI, I'm sure they could turn it off, but can you put some brakes on it? Like I've noticed sometimes like my answers are better than other times. Is there a better time of the day to ask AI a question? Like if it's like, whoa, the sun is bright at my AI chip place. So I could ask it a lot of questions, or it's a bad time when it's really cold and people are using electric heating in some location, or, like Texas is having their power grid problems. Do you know about
No,
what do
I
you?
mean, totally. And I mean, thinking about it from like the cryptocurrency, the mining there is really helpful. But that applies to a certain piece of how AI uses power and compute. So we want to think about two different ways that AI uses compute. Compute is just any sort of usage of those chips in those data centers. There's training and there's inference. So training is when you're taking a bunch of data. So it's like, this type of a question and this type of expected answer. And then you're putting that into the model and saying, hey, AI model, please get better based on this training data. And so you're teaching the model how to get better.
So is it sort of like when I go to sleep, I dream, and that's like practice for my brain? So AI data centers sort of do that too. They run through
Sure.
scenarios that are not really happening that nobody prompted them for, and they're learning, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would just call it learning, like just being in school and stuff where you're getting problems and being told, hey, here's the problem. You should learn how to make this answer. And then they check your work and say, oh, this is where you went wrong. This is how you should improve, like that
Oh,
type of thing.
cool.
And that's different than inference. So inference is where you're actually using the AI. So when you type something into ChatGPT and press enter, I used to work at Google, so I really should be saying Gemini more often. But when you type
Uh-huh.
something into Gemini,
Do you still have stock, I guess? No, I'm
I
kidding.
might have a little bit.
Yeah, you better say Gemini.
But yeah, when you type something into those
Yeah.
into those chatbots, you hit
Uh,
enter. That's then inference. So it's asking the question to the AI, getting the answer back. It's not training, like it's just giving you an actual answer.
mhm.
And so when we're talking about the training side, that is much more controllable, much more variable, and you can say, hey, wait, pause your training work right now. We don't have the power for it, or we have too
Yeah,
much
yeah.
demand on
Uh-huh.
other people. And there's a lot of really complex, interesting technology behind how to optimize and control that training. Inference, on the other hand, I don't really think people will go for that. Like, I love that idea. I would love for people to say, hey, wait, please pause your AI requests for a minute because there's not enough, power or something. But I think just knowing how Google, Amazon, Facebook, et cetera, like how OpenAI, how they all
Uh-huh.
work, the value and the just economic value that they get out of performing top tier as fast as possible is so high margin that they would rather spend a bunch of money to solve these types of things and just overbuild their solar farms, build some gas power plants as well, build a bunch of batteries, like whatever they need to do to make sure the power is there and just perform as best as possible for the customers, they're going to go that route.
But like, I'm even wondering, like, just there's different levels of Chat GPT or different levels of, Gemini or whatever it is. And there's probably one level that's lower energy than the other level. Like you could just get a quicker answer or something like that. And sometimes I'm sure there's going to be times when they do just have to turn off the power. Like there's brownouts on the grid or, things like that. And maybe there is somebody just twisting the knob just a little bit, using 1% less energy for a different answer for somebody that was rude with the AI and said the F word. No, do you ever do that?
Well, I honestly am pretty polite with AI.
uh,
I always say like, Siri, please do this, or hey, Google,
uh,
do that, please. Honestly, not because I'm worried about the AI getting
uh,
mad, but just because I don't want to train myself to be rude to another entity, even if it's not a real human entity. But anyway, that's a
yeah,
totally random side tangent.
yeah. Like there's some comic that you probably everybody's seen the joke or whatever, and the computers take over the world like the Terminator, and they're like, "I'm gonna let you live because you were nice to me," or when you're giving it prompts. But I've actually experimented with it a little bit to see what happens if I'm like really rude and swearing at it, and it still just comes back at me so polite.
Yeah, no, it does. I
Yeah.
remember at Google, the Google Assistant has a mode that you can have it for children.
Uh-huh.
And the children mode, it will say like, "Can you say that to me nicer?" or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Like I tried to tell it, I was like, call me bro. Like I want my AI to call me bro and things
Yeah,
like that. Just so, it's like a little bit entertaining and stuff like that. And sometimes
totally.
it does.
Yeah.
So I saw you about a week ago at ACP. That's the American Clean Power Conference. I ran into you. I think where was it the third floor? And there was a first floor and a third floor, and I was there for a couple of days. And so that was my first time at the ACP conference. I thought it was pretty cool. It's a conference where it's just utility scale. It was a wind conference that they decided to let the solar people in. And I did ask some people at some of the booths, I like, are you afraid? Like, what do you think about all these solar people coming in and taking over? Does that bother you? And they're like, in fact, it does. They had a guitar at their booth and then I played it. They were
Yeah.
cool, but it's kind of cool seeing all that wind stuff. I can remember seeing more wind stuff, even at like Solar Power International and stuff like that, like, 15 or 20 years ago or something like that. And so I thought it was pretty cool. And my favorite part was, did you see Trevor Noah was there?
I had back-to-back meetings that day, so I didn't get
Oh
to see him.
man,
How was the talk?
he was super awesome. And he actually gave us some ideas on things like messaging, and I can't word it as well as he can. I was talking to Nico Johnson, and he said he was going to publish it on his Suncast podcast. So you could maybe check it out there or something. But it was sort of like I was getting the feeling like it's like, hey, we don't need to like be scolding people as much. It's, like, oh, you don't believe in climate change. It's like instead of scolding them about climate change, just be like, electric cars are fun and solar is cool, and it's cheap and it saves you money. And all those things are true. But instead of turning it into like you're bad and your culture's bad and all that stuff, it just a lot of times you're not going to talk people into like, changing their ways. They're going to find it on their own. Maybe they'll hear one of Trevor Noah's jokes and realize how stupid their old way of thinking is or something like that. And so I thought that was kind of cool. And he's just like super smart. It's kind of amazing that this, you just think he's like some kind of comedian, but he is a real smart guy. So it was really
No,
cool to see
totally.
him there.
I mean, I think if you think about just humanity and how we operate, like people, especially in groups, don't react well to negative reinforcement. It's really much more of a positive reinforcement type of thing. So, I mean, if you're told like what you're doing is bad, people will, especially in groups, especially as adults, fight back and say like, no, it's not, and you're the dumb one or something. Whereas if you say you just purely focus on why something is really great, then people will change their behavior. If people, back when the Prius was getting big, right? Like, what was that, like 2007 or something? 2007, everybody's excited about the Prius. People are talking about inconvenient truth, things like that. And they're talking about how bad all of you are for the environment. You should give up your pickup trucks and whatever. I don't think anybody who had a pickup truck said, you're
Yeah.
right, I'm going to get rid of this and buy a Prius. Fast
Yeah.
forward to today. Think about who owns like Cybertrucks. Like, what is the demographic that's caught on with?
Yeah.
I think a lot of those people would not be buying a Prius ever, but because
Uh-huh.
Cybertrucks are just very cool for that demographic, like it's worked, and it's a great electric car.
Uh-huh. Yeah, cool. Yeah. And they got, and the Ford F-150 Lightning and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And yeah, and it's like I think a lot of people spend too much time preaching to the choir. Like if somebody already believes in climate change and stuff, we don't really need to talk to them. Like
yeah,
like they're already on the solar side. But if they don't believe in climate change, and those are the people that we need to like look for messaging to them. That's the kind of messaging that they're going to get turned on to, like independence, cool stuff, disconnecting from the grid, giving the finger to the utility,
yeah,
and there's a lot of cool stuff. It's really cool. And then there's also this cultural thing. So he talked a little bit about the DEI thing and how it's like there's a lot of people in this world they want to buy your product that are not, they're all different demographics. So there's like a financial incentive to hire people from all different demographics instead of forcing it down their throats or something. And that's kind of what I got for Trevor Noah was saying. And it's almost like I'm even afraid to say something like that because people might, get mad at me or stuff like that. I'm just trying to repeat what one of my favorite comedians, Trevor Noah, was saying. And I've watched him probably and listened to him for like hundreds of hours.
yeah. No, totally. I mean, in terms of just like how to message it, like I think also it's again just like focus on what actually matters to the person that you're listening to. If you're trying to tell an investment bank or a data center developer, this is what's really good for the environment, they're going to say, well, what's good for my portfolio or for my development project? Like that's all they're looking for. And so if you say, well, solar can get built, many percent faster than a gas plant or something, that's what's going to matter to them. And that's how you're going to make that argument.
Yeah.
We can't rely on the green premium to make progress. We need to rely on the ways that it's actually better.
Yeah, it's like solar is modular. I could go install a solar module right now. I could connect it to the grid. I could do one module, one microinverter, and connect it to this building in 20 minutes. Or, even really faster in Germany, they could just do, balcony solar, they call it, where they just buy it themselves and plug it in and it works. And it's like you can't do anything else that quick or, building solar farms and all that stuff. It is lightning fast. And there's like some people call it a war, but we're like, competing with other places where they don't have democracies and they don't have human rights and all that kind of stuff. And we need to get that energy out there as fast as we can to do all this AI stuff before somebody else does.
Totally.
That's kind of like a really good argument for somebody that doesn't believe in climate change, I think.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
Like we need the energy, we need it now. And how long is it going to take to build an old-fashioned power plant that has all this like archaic spinning stuff or exploding water and steam and all that kind of stuff? It's like it's all good, and even like bagging on coal really just set people off too. So maybe what I just said about the old-fashioned spinning stuff might not be a good argument to talk to somebody about when you're preaching to the anti-choir. I don't know what you would call it. Somebody that's not in your choir.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, also, like, this isn't just about people in, renewables or non-renewables or whatever. Like, even within the renewables space. All right. So, like, a year ago, when I was starting Thresh a little over a year ago, and so many people that I talked to, they said, oh, okay, no, I mean, that's definitely a problem for us, and we'd like to work on that. But AI is, we're not going to use AI. We can't use AI at all. That's, we don't want to trust that. It doesn't make any sense. This is a bad idea. And they would just kind of shut off the conversation that way. And I get it. I mean, it's hard to understand how some of this stuff works. It's not the specialty of a lot of the people in this industry, but it's also, I mean, people are quickly realizing just what impact it can have and how you can work with it well, feel very comfortable with the results, the data security, which is of course very important, but like know how that stuff is actually working and be able to make that right progress. I think everyone needs to find the ways that they are open to what's new and what could be done well versus, kind of closing our minds off. I think we all do that in different ways at different times, even within our industry that is forward thinking in certain ways, taking on AI and leveraging it in the ways that you can. And that's a huge opportunity. And I see that like at the conferences I go to, I've gone to a bunch of conferences in the last few weeks and last couple months. And I mean, pretty much every conference I see a panel where people are talking about how they are starting to use AI and how it is really impactful for them.
Mhm.
So I'm really glad to see that wave is changing.
Oh yeah, it's like I think just like in the last year, everybody's idea about AI has completely changed. It's just so convenient and it's cool. It's fun.
Yeah, no, totally. I love being at the intersection of tech and energy because it's just such an incredibly complex problem from, as we said, like just the financial engineering of all of it, along with the many different types of stakeholders. And it's just a complicated, engineering challenge as well. And then being in the middle of all of that with the different pieces of tech, super fun. Love being able to also be kind of a voice for energy in the tech world. So people who just write code, they can start to learn how electrons actually work and stuff like that too. So it's really fun. I'm definitely loving this job and this space, everything.
Yeah, and so I have the answer for people that are in tech that want to learn about solar,
Yeah.
because what about somebody else that knows about solar that wants to learn about tech? What would you suggest? Like to learn coding,
Yeah.
to go to community college, or, how would somebody go about that?
I think it really depends on what they're trying to use it for. I mean, basically what their job is. Look, if somebody wants to become a software engineer and stuff, like, there's
Mhm.
a lot of different things that we could talk about there. But in terms of just like how to use tech and what tech is available out there, I definitely think there are lots of events. We live in the Bay Area of San
Mhm.
Francisco, so that's
Yeah.
the best place in the world to learn about tech accidentally. But if you wanted to learn intentionally, again, also coming to the Bay Area for a little bit, super amazing. I'm happy to talk to, pretty much anybody. So reach out to me on LinkedIn or anything like that. And I'm happy to forward you to some of the right people or events. But if you're just, let's say you're a developer in a rural area of Texas or something, you want to learn more about how tech works and how it could help you in your job. Honestly, I would search maybe some piece of my job and add in AI. Like just go to Google or something and type in the job that you're trying to get done and add AI or software or something and see what's up there. Reach out to that company and then they'll have a sales team probably and ask them, can I get in a sales call with you? I'm not necessarily trying to buy. I'm not even the right person who could buy, but I just want to learn what do you actually do? What else is going on in the space? And if somebody reached out to me like that, I'd be very happy to talk to them and also connect them with other people who help them in other ways. I think that's really the job of what a tech salesperson should be doing, which is educating people on how tech can be helpful for them. So honestly, I think that's the easiest way to get into it. I think if you jump straight to learning how to code, it's going to be
Uh-huh.
an ambitious, long journey that
Uh-huh.
might never really pay off for
Like
you.
I took a Python class at a community college a couple of years ago. Maybe it's been 5 years now. And it was all interesting. I didn't use it, but I could have. And I think that would have been, helpful. I was trying to figure out like how to make a wire sizing program and, stuff like that. And I just got too busy doing other stuff. But I think that would be like maybe a start for somebody. It's a little bit difficult too if somebody's already working in the solar industry and then they go take a Python class, then they're going to get too busy with what they're doing and not go back to it. So they should
Yeah.
move to San Francisco and go to, what did you call the place where you work? 90?
9-0.
90. They should go to
Yeah.
everybody move to San Francisco, go to 90. San Francisco is a cool place. We'll go sailing, and then you can hang out at my solar training center and things like that. Maybe I got
Hell
an
yeah.
idea too. If you wanted to make a class that was like tech for solar people, something like that, put on heat spring. I could hook you up just in case you
No,
get
that's great.
ambitious, get some extra time or something like that.
And just for 9-0, I love, plugging them whenever I can. I am
Mhm.
not actually part of their team, but it's just a great community, a really great place to learn everything. So it's just like the number 9 and then the letters ZERO.
Oh, okay, cool.
The reason is because there are 9 zeros in a gigaton. Really, there's
Oh,
9 zeros in giga anything, but that's the focus that, we got
oh,
to
wow.
reduce our 50 plus gigaton deficit there.
Yeah, or gigawatts or giga whatever,
Yeah,
gigabytes. Cool. It's a giga. It's a billion. 9 zeros and a billion. Okay, I got it. Now
sure.
I have it all figured out. And so you heard
Yep.
it here too. Mark Grozen-Smith, he's going to be in the show notes. You can contact him on LinkedIn. He's pretty easy to find. And he said he'd answer your questions, especially if you're interested in getting into the tech side of solar, which I think is going to be super, super lucrative to know about like the technical parts of solar and then some tech, because like we're going to need to be able to program all these things to have all the batteries and the EVs all talk to each other, including to the coffee maker, right? Coffee makers are most important in my house.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, cool, man. It was really good talking to you. We should do it again sometime.
Yeah, Sean, this is incredible. Really appreciate what you're doing here,
Mhm.
both on the podcast as well as just in the events and the ways that you lead in the community. That's super, super helpful. I love what we do on the digital sphere, but the world can't just be a bunch of zeros and ones. They need real people doing real things too. So thank you so much, Sean.
So thanks so much, Mark Grozen-Smith, founder, CEO of Thresh Power. And thanks for listening to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. There's another thing going on right now is all of your NABCEP associate classes are paid for if you are a veteran. So if you know anybody that's a veteran that wants to get into the solar industry, it's fun, it's lucrative, and it could do all these great things for people, it's free. Instead of paying $895, it's a free class. So tell all your veteran friends to take some of my classes. Check it out. Go to SolarSEAN, solarshawn.com. Ow!